I'm Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society. And the Fitchburg Historical Society, of course, is very interested in the history of Fitchburg. And we are living through unprecedented times with this pandemic, our COVID pandemic. So we have been recording stories to save and preserve for the future, for people to look back and see what happened during this pandemic, how we have been responding to it as a community. It certainly has impacted how we conduct government, how we do business, how we learn, every aspect of our lives. So today we are so delighted and grateful to have Pete Gunderson with us from Gunderson Funeral Services. And Pete has a location in Fitchburg. And so we are uh, very happy to welcome him today, and also to find out his perspective on how the pandemic uh, has certainly entered into what he does on a daily basis also. So Pete, welcome, and thank you for being here with us this morning. My first question for you is just to give us a little bit of background on Gunderson Funeral Homes, how long you've been in business, your locations, number of employees, and maybe specifically for your Fitchburg location, and then the services that you offer.
Yeah, absolutely, Catherine. I'm pleased to be with you today, and the Historical Society is doing a great job. It sounds like of keeping track of things all about Fitchburg. Yes, I'm third generation, and my grandparents started out on the east side of Madison, the Shanks Corners area, kind of a Norwegian enclave over in those neighborhoods at the time. And that was 1922. My grandpa was back from World War I, where he was in the Marine Corps as a medic. Those days, the medics also handled the graves registration. So they were preparing to send our soldiers home at that time. So he had the exposure there, came back. It was a couple of years before he opened his own place. He worked for a local funeral director prior to that. And that started the legacy. So we're in our 99th year right now, our centennial year, as I might call it, as we approach 2022. And as I say, I'm third generation. My dad was in the Navy in World War II, and the minute he finished there, he went to school and started in the 1940s. Moved over to the east side of Madison, further in Monona, and today we have 9 locations around Dane County and Columbia County. Fitchburg is our state of the art. It was built in about 2010, 2011. And, as Fitchburg grew, it was finding its own identity and growing, of course. And we had a lot of discussion with the county families we were serving from Fitchburg at our east side location that maybe it was an okay thing to come to Fitchburg. And we were welcomed with open arms with the city, the administration, the senior centers, and we're very grateful for that too. So I'm going to take away my mask. I am alone today, so my distancing is safe. But our employees are a part of our schooling with our employees is that we're trained in universal precautions, and that's a necessary thing that when we enter a hospice center or we enter a nursing or care center or hospitals, we're really concerned about a couple of things. Number one is what we might bring in with us, and number two is what we might bring out into the community as well. And so back even in my days, polio was still around a little bit, tuberculosis, we got into the 80s with HIV, and then some of the bird flu and a number of things previously to now. So we've always been on those protocols. However, this pandemic has really tested everyone, I think, and we're part of that protocol system, and work closely with the nursing homes on that. Work closely with A Grace Hospice Center right in Fitchburg here as well. So we also transfer for the medical examiner's office. They're in charge of a death that occurs outside of a facility, and but we do the transporting for them. And so we're entering persons' homes, apartments, car accidents, whatever it might be at the moment. And so there's also the protocols there that we're very concerned with along the way.
Thank you, thank you. And those are just standard procedures for you every day, and you've been doing them for it sounds like for a considerable length of time. Those are your protocols. May I bring you up to maybe this year of living with COVID specifically and this pandemic? And would you tell us what it was like for Gundersons in those first weeks and months when we started being pretty much inundated with our lockdown and necessary changes in our lives? And maybe specifically for Gundersons, what kinds of changes did you need to put in place when the virus started spreading in the community?
Right. We brought our management team together right away, our funeral directors right away. Many of our funeral directors are event planners. Some are more in the care of the person that's deceased. And so we really had two playing fields there that we wanted to manage at the same time, care for the families and care for the deceased, and keep the community safe at the same time. We are always in contact with our colleagues around the country, but I can tell you that there were everyday phone calls and Zoom calls going between Wisconsin and New York to see how they were handling things, because they were way ahead of us. Today, we have one of our full-time funeral directors on loan to a funeral home in LA. They've been talking with us, so it's a mutual aid kind of thing. And but it helped speed up everybody's understanding of what's working, what isn't working. How can we do this better? Don't go this direction because it isn't going to be successful. So we're in the business of helping to heal broken hearts on one hand, but we're also in the business of keeping the community safe on the other hand. So it's been where our mission is to help those broken hearts. Our mission soon became reinventing how we do that, and to be able to help folks in that human need. Nothing anybody that ever invented. How we do things, but it's all about the need to come together to share. There's an old philosopher by the name of Gladstone that said something along the lines of joy shared is twice the joy, and grief shared is grief diminished. And so coming together is an important part of our makeup socially. And we were able to come up with some ideas. We were always trying to fine tune those ideas as we found out what worked and what didn't work so well. But we moved a lot of gatherings outdoors. Once the weather was nice in May, maybe a little bit in April, still wearing your winter coats, but we moved a lot of things outdoors. One of our successful operations is to have people stay in their cars and move everything out to our canopies or outdoors or to a tent that we might have put up in our parking lot. Still placing or finding a place of honor and a setting that was deserving for the deceased, and whether that was a person that would be in a casket or whether that would be a person that would be in a permanent urn for ashes. But finding that place of honor and finding a soft setting that was pleasing to a family at the same time, but keeping everybody safe. And so a little bit of coaching and training in the community. How does this thing work? You know, we haven't done this before. But we'd have our staff in the parking lot, giving them an idea when they pulled in the parking lot. This is how it works. This is what's going to happen. You can stay right in your car, talk to family at that 6 foot distance or more, and still know that there's a warm look straight in the eye is as good as a hug today. So and we're always not sure what should be said in any of those circumstances. So that nonverbal is always the most successful way to help your friend. So lots of things there, happening. We bring our video TVs out on stands and show historical pictures of families while people were waiting in line, or might have pictures on easels, just as we would indoors. So a lot of things like that became every day for us around the county. And our event planning funeral directors were sharing ideas back and forth, going, hey, this worked really well. Boy, I had a windy day today, had a hard time keeping that easel staying up. Let's we'll find a waiting system to keep that in place. So lots of little things that come together finally, and all. Then winter comes, and you can only wear so many coats at one time, so we were able to move things indoors. We started scheduling visitors to come. You come between 4 and 4:30. You come between 4:30 and 5. And those kinds of things. So we had small groups scheduled coming and going, and again, our staff coaching all the way along the way to keep everybody safe. We're proud to say that we are not aware of any case where anything was spread. Any of the virus was spread while on our premises or in the churches that we were working with as well, and other facilities. So Dane County has done a good job of helping everybody to stay safe, I think.
Thank you, Pete. I think it's interesting to hear all those details of how you had to pivot and change and share. It strikes me that you're sharing across the country as well as locally with one another in what works and what doesn't work, and adapting and continuing to refine things to be the best that they can be under the circumstances. So thank you for all of that work, that extra work that was needed to make that happen. If I could switch a little bit to your experience of maybe COVID specifically, in terms of the number of deaths, did you see an increase in deaths once COVID started spreading? Here specifically, maybe in Dane County, where you have your business located. And then were there any special precautions that needed to be taken with the bodies of those who passed away due to COVID to prevent spread of the virus?
Sure. Relationships we have, first of all, with the hospitals and with the care centers around, is that we've got an open line of communication, and they were also, many of them were trying to figure out what their procedures would be. So some of those developed over time, but the hospitals, for example, initially would say, okay, you guys come to our door, where previously we would go right to a patient's room possibly. You come to our doorway, we'll take your equipment and bring the deceased to you, and then we'll have our exchange right there at the doorway. We're not coming in, they're not coming out, and that was working well. Some of the care centers know us well and are able to say, no, we know you guys, we've talked over our procedures, you come right along with us. Oftentimes we would come with 2 people, and most of the time recently we come with 1 person, less opportunity for any exposure. with us and with them. And then their staff helps along the way. So a lot of protocols in place and ever-changing protocols too, as we learn more and experience more too. We're fortunate to have a relationship with a couple of the mortuary schools too. So at any given time, I may have 4, 5, or 6 interns working with us. And boy, I'll tell you, this last year has really opened their eyes. Their first year on deck, and just an experience that nobody else has had coming out of those schools, and all. So good relationships though around the community are always helpful. With families, today, a year in, we most are very used to using Zoom, maybe using phones, of course, conference calls. We'll meet directly with families if they would like to across the table, but we've got our barriers, we've got our masks, we've got our distancing and cleaning procedures going on in our facilities to do that. But many will meet with them on Zoom. We'll meet with them over the phone, especially with travel. You've got kids or other relatives that are in Atlanta or in San Francisco or in Chicago or wherever they might be and are unable to travel. And so bringing them all together on our systems to meet together has really worked well. And I know they've appreciated it. And it helps us build a level of trust with them too, back and forth when you can actually see each other. Phone calls would be, the last resort maybe, but still you can bring everybody together on one call and get everybody on the same page, keep everybody involved and letting us know what's meaningful to them. And so that we can supply something that isn't cookie cutter, isn't everybody has lived their own life and has their own experiences and feels certain ways about certain things. And that's the way it should be represented. If you can remember somebody accurately, and that's why I love having pictures around. If you can remember somebody accurately, that just helps you walk through and brings your emotions to the surface and go. And the sentence always starts out, "I remember when," and that might be a picture with an old car in the background. Might be when we were at a football game or Disney or somewhere else. But it starts the remembering, and that's what it's all about with our human behavior and social. So like I mentioned before, nobody invented these coming together things, but it's what works and what's helpful, and we can do it each in our own way. And that's with our Fitchburg facility. We have meals catered in as part of a gathering or following a gathering. We've got the video screens. We can do those pictures. We can do clips of motion picture. But the flexibility to be able to serve in a community as diverse as Dane County is and Fitchburg is just amazing until you work with different backgrounds and life experiences. I wouldn't have guessed it all, but we're kind of an international community here. We have the universities, we have the greatest healthcare around. We've got U.S. government, state government here. And so many small businesses that bring in expertise from all over the world, that the communities are just wonderfully thriving, and to get to know somebody's culture. We have birthday cakes at every one of our kids' birthdays. You know what? In a country in another part of the world, they've never heard of a birthday cake. So they've got some other ritual that and props that they might use along the way. That's the same with weddings, with funerals, with whatever it might be. But remembering accurately is part of our goal along the way, and helping people through those things. With the human caregiving, we've really tried to make it individualized, and when we bring these kids in from the universities and from the schools, we get them right involved in that, and they're going, eyes open up like, oh boy, I grew up on in this neighborhood, and this is how we always do things. You mean they do it different in other cultures or other backgrounds and things. So that's the fun part.
And that sensitivity to all of that, your awareness of that and paying attention and relationships. It sounds like all of that is just essential to the kind of work that you do. So just thinking about then the families that you serve, Pete, and they're grieving. This is just such a tender, tender moments and vulnerable moments for families. Can you tell us maybe a little bit how families have been coping with these changes in terms of the rituals that they may be used to, the way that they might have expected funerals or celebrations of life to have been done, and the distancing, the smaller groups that you can't gather in large groups now for those kind of things, funerals, and um, how are families dealing with that? Can you
Right.
give us some insight?
The isolation is the hardest for families, and even during if there's been a long illness, being able to visit or not being able to visit the person in person um, has built up, already the stress levels, and and that's not healthy for anyone. You want to be able to support your loved one. You want to be able to support each other as well. In many circumstances, the first time a family will be able to be in the presence of their loved one that's passed away, um, it may have been months if they haven't been able to enter a care center or a hospital to be with them. And they might have been able to Zoom, they might have been able to talk on the phone, but that presence and the need or the relief, I guess, that they often experience in being able to say goodbye, to be able to touch a hand, to be able to say the things in person that they really want to have come out of their heart is important. And so we have the opportunity for that to happen once we know that things are safe as well, and bring families together. Oftentimes that's been in groups of less than 10. So we may sequence through today in our facilities, most of our facilities with social distancing and the county rules, we can invite up to 35 to 45, maybe 50, depending on the facility, still have everyone social distance. But back in the times, and then you can get a whole family together at least. But back in the times of less than 10, it was difficult. We understand exactly why that needed to happen, but being able to bring families together is really been able to help them take their first steps with their grief work, and be able to support each other as well. So the Zoom is good, and live stream. We're really getting good at live stream, and we stumbled a few times back in April and May as we were trying to get things off the ground and help families be able to share. But we've got it pretty well figured out now, and live streaming has been helpful. What's fun there is we can talk with families and say, keep your phones nearby during the service or during the gathering or during the rituals, because somebody's going to text you that's watching, and so you can just see a smile come on their face when somebody texts them with, "Hey, I'm watching right now from the kitchen," and just happy to be part of it, and we wanted to support you with this hug by texting you. So it's just ways to make those things happen. We've got on our websites on each person's obituary page where you can go in and leave a message. We'll take those messages, print them out, tie them or tape them to a chair in the room, where the service is going to be held. Maybe tie a balloon to the chair, and families can go around the room and see who is sitting in each chair just by reading their message on paper. And so there's ways to help folks walk through our emotions and our feelings, and try to make it a healthy experience along the way too. Lots of little things that can happen, and hopefully become wow moments, and going, oh yeah, this is cool. We can do this. I know so and so in Norway is watching right now, and or in our military, wherever they might be stationed, and so it comes together, I guess. But reinventing every day is the answer to things, and sharing. We share with our colleagues locally too. As I mentioned, when we talked to New York. New York was looking everywhere for personal protective equipment. Couldn't get it, and so we packed up a box and sent it to a couple of different funeral homes that we have relationships with out in the East Coast area out there. So you really depend on each other, and the community's had some good suggestions as well. And so we're always listening.
It's we're all in this together. It feels like that sense of creativity and relying on one another is part of what has made this possible to do all the things that you've done over the past year during the pandemic. Pete, wondering about, many times I see when I read obituaries, families will say, we will be having a gathering when the pandemic is over, or when it is possible. And wondering how you see that in the future, whether you think there will be a lot of that happening post-COVID, and if so, how you might be involved in those kinds of celebrations later on.
Sure, yeah, and in many situations there, we may have had a private service with family, or a small gathering to help them get started with things. And you're right. When I think back to March and April and May, we were saying, okay, let's schedule something in July right now, thinking that things might have cleared by then enough. Then we were looking at October. Then we were looking at Christmas, and we're still looking ahead, of course, in many circumstances. So yes, I think most will have something, and what that'll look like. We know some may be very structured, some may be much more casual, but I really do believe that most will have some type of gathering still. The community, the support in the community, in sharing some of that grief work is so important, and I think people have realized that as much now, if not more, that when it's missing, I just haven't been fulfilled somehow, and we haven't honored this person's life completely either, possibly. We've got a lot that are just waiting for a date. We've got the whole ceremony planned, so yeah, we'll be involved along the way. We've created packages for families that the cost won't be any different than if they had done it all in one small period of time initially, even if we do a private service or gathering now and another one. That's how much we believe in the help that it has with helping a person walk down a pathway in a healthy way. So those things will happen. We look back with our 64 employees. Everybody comes up with some ideas. We're frontliners. We've been referred to as the last responders, as opposed to the first responders, affectionately. And we just know that when it comes, which in whichever way we can help along the way, we're going to find a way to hopefully help folks navigate those gatherings as they happen. I have two daughters and a son. My son's with us in business, has been for 7 or 8 years. My nephew just joined us this year as a funeral director. My two daughters had weddings scheduled for May and June of this past year. And some of the same things that we were implementing, we ended up implementing there with the weddings. Small groups, of course. Now they've planned for their major celebrations this May and June. I'm not quite sure that's going to quite happen, but we'll see as we get closer too. So coming together in all of life's rituals, rites of passage, whatever they might be, we just need to get creative and help make it happen along the way.
Yes, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
As we finish up, Pete, I just wanted to ask you if you could share with us for yourself, both professionally and personally, this time of living through the pandemic. What's it been like for you?
So first of all, I've been very, very proud of our team and our families that have worked with us. Everybody's come together. And I think that most of my funeral director staff we brought up right out of school and out of college, and you become seasoned the more you're in the professional role. And to see those staff members mentor at lightning speed the kids coming in as well. As I guess I'm pretty proud of how they performed on that. And then to see the community come together. University hospitals called us and said, hey, we're looking for a direct line between the professionals in the community. And so our pathology area wants to work directly with you, and you can coach us as well as we'll coach you on what we're seeing and how things are going. It was some things as simple as how much refrigeration room do you have? How much excess space, or do you have a plan? How are you doing it? And if we need extra equipment, can we borrow equipment from you? And vice versa, and those kinds of things. So the communication side of things within our staff and other affiliated and associated professionals around the area. I think I was pretty proud of how everyone trusted each other, understands the level of professional care over the years and reputations that you may have. So pretty proud of that professionally, I think, with everyone. Personally, there were a lot of moments where you're going, boy, I'm not sure how we're going to work through this. And as it ramps up and we're talking with our colleagues around the country, and they're going, boy, we still haven't got it all figured out. And so, we had a direct line with Dane County Madison Health Department. We're asking them questions. They're saying, hey, you know what, tell us how your processes really work. We've been so focused on the hospitals and the other frontliners that we know you're directly involved, but we really don't know all of what you do and how you do it. And medical examiner's office, we were actually swapping PPEs back and forth. I could get them for a while and then I couldn't, and so we were sending them over there. They were sending them back. They had a system that could clean masks. They'd say, bring them in on the weekends when we're not doing it for ourselves, and we'll show you how to operate it, So it's been, personally, you've been able to call on those friendships and relationships that say, hey, we ran into that, or we haven't figured that out. What are you doing? Well, here's how we did it. And, but then also keeping your own staff safe. And we've not had a case that's been spread within our walls. It's the protocols are there, and but personally, you're concerned about that. You're worried about that. Our team is really a big family, and In one case, we've got a grandpa, his daughter, and granddaughter working for us in varying roles. And so, we just personally want to say, hey, we're going to create a safe environment. When you don't feel safe, let's figure it out. Um, and the families as well that we're working with too. Some we've served since the 1920s, and so now you're in the fifth and sixth generations, and they go. Some of them can say, "Yeah, I knew your grandma, I knew your dad, I knew your whoever," and now I get to work with the fourth generation, with your kids. This is cool. So, it's personally, you worry a lot. You just want to be sure that um, the end of the day, everything's okay.
Thank you. I think you're expressing so so well, Pete, the challenges, but also the blessings that you have received over this past year. And finally, I'm going to ask you what your hopes are for the future.
Well, I'm 64 now. I think I have, a little worth and value left in me that they may keep me around a while, but I really, myself personally, I really enjoy mentoring, and I also enjoy being with families, helping with those broken hearts. But um, I think the future, I think the technology that has shown its face in the last 12 months is good. I think it's going to be very helpful. I think even without a COVID issue present, I think it'll be used well and appropriately with folks around the world, especially as when we looked at travel, uh, the impossible ability to travel in during this, to gather together and being able to share that way, and that technology has been great. It's included some folks that wouldn't have gotten the meaningful experience as well, or be able to support those in the family that are actually present. So I think the technology has been a great thing, and that ramped up quite quickly during the months as well. I think the understanding of the vulnerability of our human population is much more ingrained in us as a whole community. Um, for those that can actually take a step back and look and say, wow, we really thought we were in control, but guess what? There's something else out there. And maybe that's a good thing too. And I think socially, maybe we can turn back in towards our communities and say, hey, you know what? Okay, it's not all about me. And I guess it never has been, but I thought it was. And so I'm going to turn over a different leaf, and let's do this all together. And I'm here to help. So,
Pete, we just are so grateful for your service to the Fitchburg community, the community in all of Dane County, and your sharing with us some of the things that you needed to do as service to the people who have gone through the grieving process of losing people during this time. uh, what what you have done to make that happen, to provide the compassion and the services that people have needed. So just a great deal of thanks to you and your staff who have worked on this, and your example of building those relationships and cooperation and sharing that have meant so much to make it possible for all of this to take place. Um, and I would just like to say thank you for all of the Fitchburg community, particularly. I'm also going to just remind people that we have our Fitchburg uh, historical website for you to check out, fitchburghistory.org. And Pete Gunderson's interview will be there, as well as others that we have made on the pandemic and its impact on the Fitchburg community, as well as all kinds of other information about Fitchburg history. So hope you will check that out and enjoy what's available there on our website. So thank you again for this special time spent with you, Pete.
Well, thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Catherine. And Fitchburg has been very kind to us as well, and the whole Dane County community. But so we're pleased to be part of that community as well.
Great. Thank you, Pete. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.